Good morning, Pleasant View. Morning to all those that are gathered here and all those that are joining us online. I want to welcome you. And you may be looking at me and saying, hey, wait a second. That's not Pastor Jay. What's going on here? And you are correct. I am not Pastor Jay. Much, much better looking. You like that? Pastor Jay actually is my father, so I can, get those digs in here and there. That's okay, right? But Pastor Jay isn't feeling well. Hasn't felt well for a couple days, and during this time, and with everything going on, you don't play around with that. You don't take chances. We take that very seriously. So, just a few days ago, 3 days to be exact, I decided to preach, and so. I think it's a God thing. I think God really wanted me to do this sermon, and so He set it up, so I was going to do it. But there's a couple, because it happened so quickly, there's a couple things that you'll take notice of. First of all is your notes. Your notes are relevant to the sermon, okay? I will cover those, but I don't have them highlighted on the screen. Okay, so as we go over this, please take your notes out, and if you follow along, I do talk about those points specifically, and you can fill in the blanks, but unfortunately, you won't see that really nicely on the screen to where it says, these are the words that go into this blank. So we're not going to worry about that. So that kind of summarizes this week, and with what's going on with, Jay getting sick, Pastor Jay, and then last second, I having to do the sermon or taking the sermon, having the honor to do that, and doing that over the last 3 days, it kind of summarizes this year, right? I mean, it's just been absolutely crazy, and a lot of negatives, right? I don't want to make 2020, there's definitely positives. They're there, right? There's good things that have happened. 2020 there's a lot of positive, but it's been a tough year. When you look at what COVID has done and how it's challenged all of us, it's been tough, and it's really turned the year upside down. And before COVID, I don't think Kristen and I know, we never knew what was going to happen and how tough it was going to get. So if you rewind back to the spring, when things really started to get serious and they started to talk about closures, I don't think we had any idea how it was going to impact our society, how it was going to impact us as individuals, Kristen, how it was going to impact our marriage, our spiritual lives, our family. We just had no idea. But the closures happened, and the first thing that happened is I have a bunch of children. I have 5, a little baby girl and 4 very rambunctious boys. So they went from in person, going to school every day, and they all came home. So school's closed, said it's not safe to be here, and we were okay with that because we, of course, value that safety. And so they all came home, and right away, Kristen was thrown into a role where she was doing a lot of teaching and trying to help the kids through online learning, and she wasn't ready for that. I'm as dumb as a log. I wasn't ready for that. I don't know if I can do 5th grade math anymore. Come on, they don't even do it the way I did it when I was in 5th grade. But we were thrown into that situation, and Kristen, who owns her own salon with a partner of hers, they were closed. So things very quickly got really tough. I work in the dental industry for a company that supplies dental supplies globally, and as soon as this happened, what happened was all the dental offices closed. They weren't allowed to be open. And that was not just America, that was the U.S., so our demand went from normal, 100%, it went down to something, I forget, I heard a crazy percentage. I don't know, it was like 5%, 10%. And the company was forced, it had no choice. It had to furlough most of its employees because it didn't have a choice. So what happened, and I want to try to be careful how I say this because I was very blessed to keep my job during that time, okay? I want to recognize that. I'm very happy. That was a tremendous blessing. But the difficulty of it was our department, which is very large, went down to 2 or 3 people that were running the whole web department, and I was one of those individuals. So the workload, even though our demand was down, everything went down, the workload for me and for those of us that were left, it was almost unbearable. It was unbelievable, exploded. And so we went from, having our normal lives, used to how things were, to now our lives were turned upside down. So a normal day for our family, it was like I started work. I got up very early. I started work about 6 a.m., and I worked straight through till 5 o'clock, very rarely even taking a break, just trying to keep up with the work. And then what happened at 5 o'clock was I had to check, I had to stop, eat dinner, take care of the kids. At 9 o'clock, I had to get back on because I just had too much to do. I could not get it done. So then I worked 3 or 4 more hours, and I did that every day. Kristen, what happened for her is, her day was tough. She woke up. I was in the den. That's where I did my work at home, and I was basically locked in there. So she was practically a single mom, taking care of 4 boys, trying to get them to do school, which in their mind, for whatever reason, they thought school was over. They were like, oh, this is great, it's just like summer. It's like, no, you have to keep learning. School's not over, you have to finish it up. So Kay's wrestling with them, taking care of a little baby girl, and dealing with the side effects and everything going on with her salon. So it was tough. It was really tough. And I remember Kristen, every day for weeks, she would come into my office and break down in tears because it was overwhelming. And I was literally helpless. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't just say, I couldn't piece out of my responsibility at work. So I was torn. It was an awful time. And she's trying to figure out how to keep her salon open. She's trying to figure out how to keep the boys on track. Harper, of course, decided, hey, this is the perfect time not to sleep at night. You know how babies do that. They just look at a situation and say, I'm going to just not sleep now. So it was tough. And this happened, and this went on for day after day after day after day. And honestly, it continued for months. You guys remember how long we were closed. It was tough. And we struggled. And we continue to struggle, right? That continued. Now, things are opening up. Things are getting better. Kristen's salon opened back up. They're back to work at a lower percentage, but they are. So things are improving, but there's still tremendous uncertainty, right? We don't know what's going to happen. Now things are spiking up again. What does that mean? And all throughout this, it's hard, as an associate pastor here, I want to pretend like, I'm this holy guy that I trust God and I'm not worried, I'm not anxious, it's not difficult for me, but that's not the reality, right? That's not the reality. So during this time, and still today, I struggle with it, and I look at this situation and I say, hey, God, excuse me, where are you at? Where are you at here? This is tough, and I don't see an end to this. Like, it's just going to keep going and going. So where are you here? This is hard. And I'm sure that you can relate to that. And there's many times, it hasn't just been this, right? There's many times in my life where I've dealt with something and I've felt let down from God. I felt let down. God, I thought you would do this or react this way or help in this way. But that's not the reality of what happened. God was silent. He was quiet. He didn't react the way I thought he would. Maybe he wasn't listening. And I know that everyone here today and everyone watching online, you've dealt with the same thing. You're dealing with the same thing that I just explained to you in your families, maybe worse. Maybe it's a difficult situation for you. Maybe you've lost your job through COVID, or you've had other impact, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's hard not to look at it and say, hey, God, where are you at? Where are you at in this? Or maybe it's something going on. Maybe it's not COVID related. Maybe even before COVID, you were dealing with a mess in your life and your life is out of control. Maybe you've just kind of crossed the bridge of life and you're coming to your later years and you're looking back and, man, it's just nothing but disappointment. I thought I would be here. I'm getting older. I thought I would be in this place, but the reality is I'm over here. And you're just disappointed. Things have not gone the way that you've wanted them to, and you're struggling. Maybe you're single, and you've been single for a while, and you've held on to purity, and you're trying to please God, and and all you want in your heart is a family, is to get married, but it's not happening. You're not finding anybody. And the plans that you had isn't the reality of what's happening, and you feel like God's not there. You feel like he's silent. You feel like he's abandoned you. Or maybe it's an addiction. Maybe you have an addiction and you've had the addiction for years, 5, 10, 15 years, and you just can't handle it anymore. And you've gone to God and said, God, I can't do it. I can't break this. I can't overcome it. Why are you letting it continue? Why are you letting this still happen? And instead of a clear answer, instead of God taking it away, he's quiet. And you start to wonder, is God really there? Is he really there? You know what? I'd love to be able to get down and go to each one of you and look you in the eyes and say, hey, I got 7 steps. 7, baby. You do these 7 things. That's 7, right? Yeah. You do these 7 things, and it's, boom, it's going to be fixed. I would love to do that. That's not reality. That's not how it works. I'd love to come down and put my hands on you and pray and just say, God, take it away. And after I'm done praying, oh, it's gone. Over. It's fixed, whatever it is. But I found that's not how God works. Sometimes, yes, he can work that way. But no, most of the time he doesn't. I found out God is more of a mystery than he is a mathematical equation. God works in a much different way than we think a lot of times that he should. One thing I want to say and can clearly say to you, I can come down to you and I can look in your eyes right now, and the thing I want to say today is, I feel your pain, I understand, I have empathy for what you're going through, whatever it is. And God is not going to abandon you. Even though he's silent, even though you're not sure what's going on, he's not going to abandon you. He is going to help you. He is going to be with you through it. Hebrews 13:5 says this, God will never leave you. God will never forsake you. No matter what you're going through, no matter how traumatic the pain is, no matter how difficult the situation is, God will never, hear me, never leave you. He will never forsake you. So today we're talking about this topic of letdown, and that has been our series. Up on the screen you can see the title. That has been our series, and we're going to highlight that. And I want to look at someone in the Bible who led a life. He has a really, really cool story, but it is riddled with letdowns. And it's a guy by the name of Joseph. And when I say Joseph, it's the technicolored coat guy. It's not Joseph, Jesus' dad. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry, I can explain it to you. But basically, Joseph grew up. He was a young guy in a big house. He was the youngest of 11 brothers. And his dad was Jacob. And Jacob wasn't the best dad, just to be very honest with you. And Jacob loved Joseph more than anyone. He had tremendous favoritism, which, by the way, dads, that's not what you do. It's not being a good dad, but it's what Jacob did. And Jacob didn't hide it. Jacob, he actually highlighted it. And he did that in many different ways. And one of the things that he did was he bought Joseph this really expensive, extravagant coat. I mean, back in the day, to get a coat like that, you didn't just go to Macy's. You didn't just go to Walmart and buy whatever you wanted to. You didn't have variety. It was made, handmade. It was expensive. It was hard. So he bought him this really awesome coat that was all these different colors. And back then, let me tell you, the main color was like, I don't know, dirt. You didn't have these fancy colors, but he got him this amazing coat, and he gave it to him, to Joseph, and it just highlighted his favoritism. It highlighted to his brothers, hey, Joseph, he's my boy. You guys, Joseph's it. And what happened, as that was happening, his brothers began to hate him. And bitterness began to develop in their brothers' hearts. And they looked at Joseph and they hated Joseph. But Joseph, he didn't do anything wrong. He was a man that followed God. And early on in his life, God started to reveal plans that Joseph had for him, that God had for Joseph. Let me get that right. And so he started to have dreams, and he knew that God had something special in store for him. But then he started sharing with his brothers these dreams. I'm not sure why, but he started sharing with his brothers these dreams. And one was, hey, eventually, basically it was, your guys are going to bow down to me. I'm going to be this great guy, and you're going to bow down to me. And well, that went over great. They were like, oh, great, can't wait for that. Yeah, Joseph, let's do it now. No, what it did, it solidified that hatred, and it made things worse. But Joseph knew at an early age, God had a plan for him. God had something special in store for him. But then what happens is, one day his brothers are out and they tend to the flocks. Around that time, they had a lot of livestock. And the brothers, what they did was they took care of that livestock, and they would go to the different places where the food was, where the grass was that the livestock could eat. So Jacob says to Joseph, he says, hey, go check on your brothers. Run out. I want you to check on your brothers, make sure they're good, make sure the flocks are good, and then come back and report to me. I want to know what's going on. I want to make sure they're okay. So he goes out, and I don't know what kind of terrain it is, but his brothers see from a long way off, because of that special coat, they can see, oh, here comes Joseph. And right away they get together. I can just picture them getting a huddle and say, hey, look, that brat, that jerk, he's coming. Let's get him. And his brothers make a plan to kill him. They want him dead. And one of his brothers, Reuben, he's trying to save Joseph, the Bible talks about. And he says, no. Let's not kill him, guys. Let's not kill him. Instead, let's throw him in this well, and then let's kind of decide what to do with him. Let's not kill him. That's not right. Let's do something horrible to him. I almost laugh saying this. Let's do something horrible to him, but let's not kill him. We'll have blood on our hands. Okay, yeah, still not right. Why don't you just do the right thing? But they didn't. So they rip his coat off. They throw him in this dry well. They dip his coat in blood. Eventually, they take that to his father, and they say, look, is this Jacob's coat? Or Joseph's coat? And Jacob believes them, and they believe that he was killed by a wild beast, and that's how they lie to his father and explain what happened to Joseph. But what happens is he's in this dry well, and an Egyptian caravan comes past, and the brothers get the idea, well, let's not kill him. Let's just sell him as a slave to these Egyptians. So that's what they do. They get him out of the well. Off he goes as a slave to these Egyptians. They take him to a slave market, and a guy by the name of Potiphar, who is very high up, second in command to Pharaoh at the time, buys Joseph, and then Joseph works for him. So you can see, okay, Joseph's life so far, it's been real up and down, right? So things are looking rough. Things are looking not so good. He's sold as a slave, ripped out of his, he's daddy's boy. Now he's ripped out of his family. He's just a young boy. Estimates around that time he was like 16, 17 years old, so just a young man. And he's sold as a slave, working as a slave for this Egyptian guy, Potiphar. But the scripture says God is with him, and God blesses him. And what happens is Potiphar starts seeing, wow, everything Joseph does, it's good. Everything he's touching, it's like turning to gold. Everything he does is right. And it says that he was promoted and moved up in Potiphar's household until Joseph was in charge of everything. And the scripture actually says that there was nothing that Potiphar was concerned with. All he needed to be concerned with was eating. That's awesome life. That sounds cool. Get up in the morning, all you think about is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay, I like that. Joseph took care of everything to the point where that's all Potiphar had to worry about. But then what happened, so things started to improve, but then what happened is Potiphar's wife takes notice of Joseph. And she's looking at Joseph, and I don't know, maybe she's like the desperate housewife type, or I'm not sure, but she's looking at Joseph and she's saying, oh, hey there. You know what I'm saying? Like the, hey there. And she wants to have a relationship. She wants to sleep with him. And Joseph is not having any of it. So she tries again and again, and Joseph says, look, Potiphar has given me everything. I'm second in command here. The only thing he hasn't given me is you. So why would I betray him and God and take the very thing that isn't rightfully mine? He does the right thing again and again. But one day, she catches him. He's in the home doing his duties, and they're by themselves. No one else there. And she gets him by the robe, and she says, all right, come on, you're sleeping with me. Let's go. Come on, give in to this, right? And Joseph refuses. But in the process, he slips out of his robe and flees, runs out of the house and runs away. But she has his coat. Potiphar comes back. The other slaves comes back, and she says, look at this. Look what happened. That slave that you bought, Joseph, he tried to sleep with me. He tried to rape me. And Potiphar, he has no choice then. In his anger, he was furious about it. And it's interesting when you read the scripture, it looks like, or it seems like Potiphar, because Potiphar could have had him killed immediately, right, for something like that. But actually, it's believed that Potiphar was angry because he knew his wife was being dishonest, but he had no choice what he had to do with Joseph. So Potiphar takes him and throws him in jail. So look at this. Think of his story so far. I mean, talk about letdown, right? It's just from one bad thing to the next. As soon as it looks good for Joseph, something happens and things go bad. Where's God in this? Right? Where's God? So you've got this guy that is committed. He's not doing wrong stuff. And with a situation with Potiphar's wife, he did what was right. Not once, multiple times. He is doing what's right, and he refuses to sin. He refuses to give in to lust. He refuses. He could have easily done that, but he's doing the right thing. And what happens? Bad. Gets thrown in jail for doing what's right. So where's God? Where's God in this? Why doesn't God show up and take care of this? Why is this happening? So he gets falsely accused and he gets thrown into prison. And the story keeps going. In Genesis 39, we learn, it tells us where God is. And it says this, Genesis 39, while Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. So God was with him when he was in prison. And it says he showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden, so that the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. So here's the thing. God was present in Joseph's pain, right in the middle of it. You know, so many of us, we think when these things happen, the first thing we think is, that God puts a check in the mail, right? I can't pay the bills, or I'm struggling with money. Well, our expectation is, okay, God put a check in the mail. Let me see it tomorrow so I can pay my bills, right? That's our expectation. That's what we want. God, fix it. Fix it now. And this is how I think you should fix it. We're struggling in a marriage, right? Our marriage is falling apart, and we think, oh, okay, God, here, fix it now. Like, I want this weekend, let's have it fixed by this weekend. We got plans, really like if these problems would be fixed, just come in, do your magic, and fix it. But that's not how God works. That's not what God does. You see, what we see here is God is moving in a completely different way in Joseph's life. He doesn't take the pain away. Instead, here's what he does. He enters right into the middle of the pain with Joseph, right into it. He moves into the abandonment. He moves into the false accusations. He moves into the prison, and he doesn't remove the pain. But instead, what he does is he picks Joseph up above the pain so that his life and actions aren't ruled and dictated by what's going on, by the circumstances. I want you to know, everyone here, Pleasant View, everyone here, everyone online, everyone listening, God is present in your pain. God is present in whatever situation that you're dealing with. He is present. He is there. And I can't imagine what you and what the people of watching are going through. I can't imagine it. The different situations, the different pain that you're dealing with, the traumatic problems that you're dealing with. Maybe it's abandonment. Maybe when I used that word, boy, that really struck your heart. Maybe you said, oh, that hurts. Yeah, I've been abandoned. Maybe you feel like God's abandoned you. Maybe you've been abandoned by your family. Maybe you've been abandoned by friends. We have people right here now listening, and you feel abandoned by your spouse, and you're asking the question, where's God? Where's he at? Maybe it's not abandonment. Maybe you're a victim. Maybe you're a victim of gossip. Maybe you're a victim of struggling with just health. Now with COVID and everything going on, even if you have something simple, it makes it so much more difficult to deal with it because everything has changed and everything's riskier. Maybe you're going through that right now and you're saying, wow, where's God in this? Maybe it's abuse. You're listening right now and you've been abused, verbally abused by your dad. You're having a hard time bouncing back from it. Maybe it's physical abuse by someone that you've been really close with, someone other than your family. Or maybe it's sexual abuse. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of disappointment. And I want you to know that God is with you no matter what it is. God is with you in your pain. It may seem like he's silent. It may seem like he's not there. But Hebrews 13:5, remember, it says, never will I leave you. Never will I forsake you. God is with you in your pain. So, if we jump back to Joseph, so he's in prison, right? And I would love to say, yeah, he was in overnight, just a misdemeanor. The next day he's taken out. But that's not the reality. Joseph was in prison for years. Years because of this lie. But God was present with him. And it says that he became great within prison. I don't even know what that looks like. But he basically was helping the warden run the prison, and everybody was under him. He took care of people. And what happened was 2 very predominant officials were thrown into prison from Pharaoh, and they fell under Joseph, a baker and a cupbearer. And so they're under Joseph, and one night they both have a dream. They're not in very long. They both have a dream. And the next day they get up, and Joseph can see that they're all upset, and he comes to them and says, hey, what's the deal, guys? What's the problem? And said, hey, we had these vivid dreams, and we don't know what they mean. And Joseph says, hey, tell me the dreams, and God will use me to interpret them. So he tells him these dreams. I'm not going to go into the dreams. They're really interesting. I would encourage you to just open your Bible and read about them. They're really neat. One is, neat in a way. One is pretty gory and gross because of what happened. The baker, he ends up getting killed, but the cupbearer ends up getting restored back to the Pharaoh. And so Joseph interprets these dreams, and they're 100% accurate. And what he says to the cupbearer, he says, hey, look, when you go back to Pharaoh, the only thing I want, because I interpreted these dreams for you, the only thing I want is just don't forget me. Don't forget me. Bring me up to Pharaoh. I'm in here, it's not fair. Like I'm in here based on a lie. Don't forget me when you go to Pharaoh. So cupbearer, he gets restored into Pharaoh's court. He's now the cupbearer for the Pharaoh again. And what happens? He forgets Joseph. Totally forgets him for years. And Joseph remains in prison. So then, a few years later, after this has happened, Pharaoh, he has a dream. He actually has 2 dreams. And he knows, they're very vivid, and he knows right away that, okay, these dreams, something's up. Something's very serious about these dreams. So he calls everybody together. He says, everybody, wise men, magicians, whoever, come, I want to tell you my dreams. You have to interpret this for me. I have to know what this means. And no one can do it. They pull everyone together. No one understands the meaning of the dream. And then something special happens. The light bulb, bloop, on the cupbearer goes off and says, wait, Pharaoh, You remember that time you threw me in jail? You know, that unfortunate time when I was bad and I was in jail? I had a dream, a very vivid dream like this, and there was a guy by the name of Joseph. And he came and he interpreted the dream. If you bring him here, I think he can interpret this dream for you. And so that's what Pharaoh does. Pharaoh says, hey, go get this guy. I need to know what these dreams are. Bring this guy in here. So they clean him up, give him a shower, because I guess he's stinky, cut his hair, make him look presentable, and they bring him to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh says, Joseph, can you interpret this dream? And Joseph says, no, I can't, but God can. God's going to use me. God can interpret these dreams. And he tells him these two dreams. And again, I'm not going to go into the dreams. I think they're super interesting. You could spend lots of time on them, but it's not really relevant for today's message. So I would encourage you to go check them out. But he tells him the dream, and Joseph, he looks at him and he says, look, this is what it means. And these are what the dreams to summarize. He said, God's saying to Egypt, the greatest nation, and Egypt was, that time, the greatest nation in the world, you're going to have 7 years of abundance. 7 years of prosperity. You're going to have, your crops, they're going to go way beyond. Like for us today, it's like the stock markets are going to go boom, through the roof, like beyond your expectations. Everybody's going to make money, crops, perfect weather, everything's going to grow. 7 years this is going to happen, and you're going to have tremendous abundance. Things are going to be great. But after, there will come 7 years of extreme famine. Stock markets are going to tank. People are going to lose their jobs. They aren't going to have any rain. The ground is going to be cursed. Nothing is going to be able to grow. It's going to be like nothing, anything, anybody has ever seen that severe. And then Joseph goes to Pharaoh. He says, look, Pharaoh, this has been decided by God. This is serious. This has been decided. God is not thinking about doing this, and if you change some things, it's not going to happen. God has decided this is going to happen. So here's what you got to do. You got to do all these things to prepare. Otherwise, you're not going to survive. And Egypt's not going to survive. And so Pharaoh listens very intently, and he hears, and at the end of it, he says, well, what better person to take care of this than you? Obviously, God is with you. Obviously, something is special here. And you're the right man to do it. So just like that, boom, he goes from being in prison. He interprets this dream because God gives him the interpretation. He becomes the most powerful man in Egypt. And it's weird how the scripture talks about this, and I don't really understand, like, is he under Pharaoh or with Pharaoh or as powerful as Pharaoh? But it says that he is the most powerful. It says that Pharaoh gives him his ring, and Joseph is running the show. So Joseph gets to work, and he immediately begins to prepare for these years of famine. So he gets farmers together. He pulls everyone together and says, listen, we got to be careful here. We got to take this seriously, otherwise we're not going to survive. So look, you got 10 baskets of grain. I want you to keep 5 and give me 5. So you guys use that to feed your family, but we're taking 5 and we're putting it in this huge barn that we just built, and we're going to stock it up. And they did that, and they took the abundance and they stored it, and they did that for 7 years. Then the 7 years of famine hit, and it was desolate. But because Joseph prepared, because he prepared for what was coming and God used him, Egypt had enough food for basically, during that time, it was the world. It said it not only had enough food for Egypt, but other countries would come to Egypt and buy food from them to survive. So guess what happened? This is going on. Joseph executes this plan. Things are going well. Well, it isn't long that Joseph's family runs out of food. And Jacob says to his brothers, hey, I heard there's food in Egypt. Go get food. We have nothing. Go get food or we're going to starve. So he sends his brothers off to Egypt. And they go to get food, and right away, guess what happens? Joseph recognizes them. And then, if you wouldn't know this story, I would be like, oh, baby, here we go. Revenge time. Like Rambo 5. Like, time to get revenge. Right? That's what I'm thinking. But that's not the reality of what happens. Thank goodness it's not what happens. But Joseph sees him, and he sees that it's his brothers, but his brothers don't recognize him. They don't know that it's Joseph. And so he starts talking to him, and he starts asking questions, and he's like, hey, where are you guys from? Do you have a father? Okay, still alive. What's your family situation? Oh, you had 11 brothers? Oh, what do you mean by had? Oh, one brother died from wild animals? Isn't that interesting? Okay, that's me, but whatevs, So he asks all these questions. And it goes back and forth, and you have to read. There's a lot to it. A lot happens during this time, but it gets to the point where he can't handle it anymore, right? He can't handle the masquerade. And he grabs his brothers, or he says, I want you in my chambers right now. And he takes him in his chambers, and he goes into his inner cell. He goes into his inner quarters, and the Bible says he falls to his knees and weeps. Absolute brokenness. He is a broken man because of the pain that had gone on in his life. He stands up, he goes out, and he looks his brothers right in the eye, and he says, it's me, guys. It's Joseph. Remember? That kid you threw in the well and you sold as a slave? It's me. And you could hear a pin drop, total silence. And think about what the brothers were thinking. They were like, that's it? Game over. They were thinking that they were dead, and they said nothing. They couldn't. They were scared to death. So here's what happens. Genesis 50, it says, his brothers came and threw themselves down before him. We are your slaves, they said. But Joseph said this to him, and this is awesome. Listen to this. He says, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? Get this. Hear this, church. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Whoa. Whoa. He basically looks at him and says, hey, get up. Am I God? No. I know you guys intended to kill me. You wanted me gone. But God had a plan, and he used that. He used that to save millions of people. God intended it for good. See, God has a purpose in your pain. God had a purpose in Joseph's pain. And I just want you to think about it. Just push the rewind button a little bit. Think about this, right? Joseph, who was thrown in that well, he was sold as a slave, right? If he wouldn't have been thrown in that well, if he wouldn't have been sold as a slave, he wouldn't have got bought by Potiphar, thrown in prison, interpreted the official's dreams, brought before Pharaoh, interpreted his dream, made second in command, and he wouldn't have saved anyone from Egypt. They would have been completely unprepared if that wouldn't have happened. And he wouldn't have saved his own family. His own family would have been killed by the famine. Think about that. There was a purpose to everything that happened. And God has that same purpose for you and what you're dealing with. There's a strategic plan. And that plan, that purpose, it was orchestrated by God. And I want you to know, he has the same plan for you. Romans 8:28, it says, God works for all things for good for those that love him and are called according to his purpose. I want you to know when he created you with a God-sized purpose. And he's going to take all that pain, all the things that you're going through, that traumatic event, that pain that you are dealing with, and he's going to turn it for good because there's a purpose for what you're going through. It's not for nothing. He has a purpose to COVID. I don't like to think of it that way. Sometimes it's tough to think of it that way, but he does. I can think back through my life of the different things that I went through, and currently in the situation we're in now, I think back, and if you've been here before, I spoke many times, and it seems like I constantly go back to some issues that Kristen and I dealt with when we were in our marriage. I talk about it a lot. It was a very traumatic event for us. And if I think back to that and I reflect on that, And you ask me, well, Jonah, if you could, press the rewind button and change anything, would you change anything? My answer would very quickly, without even thinking about it, would be absolutely not. I wouldn't. When we were married at a very young age, and I'm not going to go into detail on it, but we had problems right away in our marriage that were bad, and our marriage almost ended, and it was devastating. It was devastating to the both of us, and it was very painful. One of the most painful things I ever went through. And I think Kristen could say the same thing. But I wouldn't change a thing. And why? Well, because God had a plan. God used that to shape our marriage. And our marriage would not be today what it is, or wouldn't be at all, if we wouldn't have went through that. God used that to shape us, to make us into different people, to make me into the husband that I needed to be, not a perfect husband. Very flawed husband, but the husband I needed to be to have a marriage, to have a family. And if that wouldn't have happened, we wouldn't be married today. It would have eventually broke down and failed. We wouldn't have our children. 5 beautiful kids. 4 boys, 1 beautiful little girl. That wouldn't have happened. It was part of God's plan. So I wouldn't change a thing because He used that pain to shape us. He used that to make something beautiful that He knew about. If you had talked to me like that day, I would have been like, yeah, fix it now. Get rid of it now. I don't want to deal with it. I don't like the pain. I don't like this feeling. Please, just take it away. But thank God He didn't. Thank God that He had a bigger plan for me. And He used that and made something beautiful. And now as we're dealing with COVID, it's tough. I'll be honest with you. I'm sure some of that stuck to you when I was talking to you about how it turned our lives upside down, because you're dealing with the same thing. And now we're looking at it and we're saying, I don't even know when it's going to end. It could get worse. I don't know. But as I stop and as I step out of the stressful situation and I reflect on what God is doing, and I reflect on this situation that we're in, I see God working. I see God doing things, amazing things. He is present in this situation. He has a purpose for it. Just with me, He's already highlighted changes I need to make in my life due to this pandemic. He's highlighted where I am falling short as a follower, where I'm falling short as a husband, where I'm falling short as a father, and where I'm failing as an employee. He's using that to expose and change and develop and make me into a better person that He wants me to be. With this pandemic, I have never, this past year, if you go back to when we closed, I have never spent this much time with my children, Kristen and I. Because we were at a point, and now I worked very long, okay? It was very hard, but the kids were home every day. My daughter came in every morning and said good morning to me. I never would have experienced that. I could hug my kids, good morning. And I never would have had that. And we grew as a family closer than we have ever been due to this awfulness, due to this COVID. And it developed our family and matured our family and exposed where we struggle as a family and getting along and with some discipline and other things. And God is using that. He used that time. Was it painful? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it is. He's using that to change us and to make us better, to make us stronger. And I wouldn't change a thing. God is there in the pain. For anyone feeling like, I don't know. I don't know if God's there, Jonah. I hear you, but I just don't know. I don't feel it. He's silent. And I don't know what your situation is. Maybe it is COVID and that's just crushing you. Or maybe it's abandonment. Maybe it's your marriage. Maybe it's your dreams. Like I said with the bridge, you thought you would be somewhere. You're not. And you're not going to get there. So your dreams are shattered and you're left picking up the pieces and you don't know where to go. And you're looking at God and wondering why. Maybe you raised your kids. Maybe you're trying to have kids and you can't. Maybe you raised your kids to believe in God and they're not. And they're not making those choices and they're wandering away from God and you're anxious and you're scared and you're looking to God and saying, why? What did I do wrong? Why aren't you here? Why aren't you taking care of this? Maybe you've abandoned somebody. Maybe it's you that is abusing someone. Maybe you victimize somebody. And you're trying to stop and you don't know how. You've formed these bad habits and it's painful. You were abused as a kid and you don't know how to deal with it. And you're doing the same thing. And you don't know how to stop. And you look to God and you scream to God and you just need a touch, a word. And you don't know where He is and you're questioning. I just need God to be visible in my life. Maybe it's healing you need. Maybe it's forgiveness you need. I want to say this to you, and I just want you to feel it. I want you to know it. I want to reinforce it. I could say it a million times. God is here in this. He is here with you. He is here in your pain. He is here in COVID. He is here in the abuse. He hasn't walked away. He hasn't abandoned you. He's here for you, and He's going to see you through it. He's going to use it. But we have to trust Him. We have to have faith that He's going to use it. Would you pray with me? Lord, I just want to thank You so much, God, for this opportunity. A week ago today, God, I didn't know that I was going to have this opportunity, but You had a plan. And You put that plan in motion, God, and I'm so thankful for it. God, You had a message that You want to speak into the hearts of those that are listening, and I just pray that You continue to speak to the hearts of everyone dealing with different situations. Maybe it is COVID, maybe it's other things, God, but speak to the hearts of those that are hearing this and just help them to know that You're there, that You haven't walked away, that You haven't abandoned them, that no matter how difficult the situation gets, You're not going to forsake them. You're not going to leave them alone, that You're going to be there and that You're going to use it, God. You're going to use it for good. God, I know it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it, God. We don't want to deal with the pain. We don't want to deal with COVID. We want it gone. But God, help us to trust in You. Help us to fall back into Your arms and to know that it's going to be okay because You are here, Lord, just like You did with Joseph. I'm sure he sat in the prison, God, and said, why? This ain't going to happen, but You had a plan, and it's for good. It's for something great. God, help us to trust You with this plan. I pray it in Your name, God. Amen.